Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, this is 1973's The Sexorcist, aka Undressed to Kill. And as the poster says here, the Sexorcist Devil. Now, this is part of the Peakorama Big 2-unit show from Vinegar Syndrome with Deviants in Love, but we are looking at the Sexorcist Devil, and it says here Lily Landmark as Diane. It's hard to see her name there, but this is directed by Ray Dennis Steckler, and 1973, 60 minutes long. And here's some screenshots from the back. Yeah, just these three for this film right here. Very cool. Let's get into this film here, folks. Now, Ray Dennis Steckler, I believe he did the incredibly strange creatures that became mixed up zombies and which was this awesome carnival horror film. I believe he did that one, and there's a version out there on DVD, and I believe that was one right there that he did. And Joe Bob Briggs, I believe, does that particular DVD version. But Ray Dennis Stickler did a lot of hardcore films, X-rated films, and Vinegar Syndrome has displayed some of those. And we're going to be looking at The Sexorcist right here. You can look on this YouTube page for some other Ray Dennis Stickler X-rated films as well. This is such an interesting world collision of horror and sex film and occult film, possession film, demonology film, kind of 70s occult film, and meets sex film. Now, in The Sexorcist, or The Sexorcist Devil, or aka Undressed to Kill, we have a film involving a photographer, kind of a reporter, a sexorcist, kind of demonologist, a junkie prostitute, a pimp, two girls making ends meet and living together in an apartment or a house with a pool. The conjuring of the devil through sexual means, through sexual vulnerability, a haunted marsh. Yes, a marsh area in the daylight that is evil, that has mystical powers, supernatural powers. There's evil hidden there. Parchment papers with ritualistic incantations on them. A knife of murder, murders, blood, oral sex, blowjobs in particular, a variety of different worlds involving ejaculation, and one girl in particular as the focus of this sex film, of the sex meeting the horror world. And let's get into this film right here, folks, because this is a fascinating, sexy, and spooky 60 minutes. First and foremost, let's look at the music for this film. This has such a wide palette of music and sound design territory. It's unreal. Really, there are sections of this film that you could isolate and use, you know, for Halloween, or use for just a horror, creepy atmosphere. On the one hand, we have this sound, this score of orchestrated, synthesized horror. Spooky, creepy, almost reminded me of kind of the original Evil Dead. And in some form or fashion, the story and pieces of the film, especially at the beginning of the film, and the reporter and the photographer and the way things are being displayed, really reminded me a lot of the original Evil Dead. Kind of we're entering into this, you know, occult world, and we are investigating it, and things could be opened, doors could be opened into this evil world. Beware. And so we have the sound design of that horror, and we also have 60s rock, 60s guitar, really great 60s guitar in these songs. We also have jazz that almost sounds 60s jazz, but even older. We even have some music that sounds like the 50s a bit. Some guitar work that might even sound surfy at times. And then this unbelievable palette of this almost steel drum, ritualistic, tribal music colliding with these tinges of avant-garde horror cues. And the mix of that ritualistic music, steel drum, percussion, mixed with this electronic horror sound design becomes its own world, its own beast. There is something dark, something creepy at times about ritualistic music, voodoo-like music, hand percussion colliding with the world of horror, almost like putting into an evil possessed trance. And there's excellent music in here. We even have some reverb of dialogue and reverb of piano and electronic sounds, especially in the climax of the film. And we have kind of first-person narration for the first portion of the film, which is very interesting because we start believing that we know who the main character of this film is, and then it shifts. It shifts because this main person we think this film is about is talking about another person, and that other person, there becomes a shift in the storyline, a shift in the focus of the movie. Now, the interesting thing about this film also is the fact that we are literally colliding two worlds here, folks. We are literally colliding the world of occult horror, demon horror, spooky, creepy, with a sex world as well. And they are represented in almost a surreal fashion, moving from world to world within this film, moving from world to world to world as the music moves from world to world to world. And it almost becomes surreal, the way the mixing is happening. Stylistically, we have some great work with shadows in this film. We have some great, I believe it's this mirror on the ceiling or being shot from above. It's a really wild kind of piece of cinematography that I can't really tell, but I believe it's a large mirror on a wall or on a ceiling. This great shot of the main girl next to a swimming pool and kind of the cascading shadows of the water and her presence there with this amazing outfit on. This wild usage of painted artwork that reflects some of the storyline of the film, in particular, even a particular costume in the film, and that I didn't realize at first. And this artwork will soon be mimicked in the closing credits of the film, the closing homemade credits of the film. I mean, it truly looks like horror comics, or just, yeah, like horror comic art, or kind of from the heavy metal magazines, but a real homegrown version of it. And it's spooky and creepy and skeletons and snakes and spiders and bats and just this whole vibe and you know, kind of domineering of dominating a woman in the horror world. Was this artwork done specifically for the film, or did a particular artist do it? and they used it in the film. I don't exactly know, but it looks like the same artist did all of the artwork. And check out the closing credits of the film again, folks. I have to mention that again. The closing credits of this film are freaking phenomenal with that type of artwork and homemade drawings of the names in the credits. Now, we really, 1973, there are a lot of aspects of the sound design of this film and of some of the feels of the film that feel like the 60s to me. Some of the vibes of the film feel like the 60s, but early 70s, great retro locations and furniture and carpets and a really, really interesting representation of evil, of the devil, of sexorcist or sexorcisms. And possession by sex, and the definition of that within the storyline of the film as well. And something very, very interesting, and we have violence in this film. We have bloodletting in this film. A couple sucker punch scenes in that violence as well. And the eyes, the cross on the forehead, and this wild outfit involving chains and leather. And the sex scenes in this film are all based on one girl. And I really like this girl. Very sexually attractive, beautiful natural body, her boobs, her thighs, her skin, she's kind of thick. It just looks just sexy, natural, looks awesome. And this brunette, and her eyes are a focus within the evil world, within the horror world, and within the sex world as well. Lots of focus on blowjobs that the girl gives and sperm kind of coming out of her mouth while the penis is still in her mouth, and some very bizarre, lots of sperm play in the film, kind of touching it and spreading it, and also her own, this wild shot of her own tongue kind of constantly touching the tip of the penis and spreading sperm like that. So really, really, and I believe Ray Dennis Steckler has focused on blowjobs before in some of his other hardcore films, if I can recall, and sperm in particular. We do mostly have oral sex here, but we also have intercourse. But it's mostly oral sex, so it's a very interesting sexual world in this film as well. We also have some great cursing in the dialogue that really kind of reminds me of the beautiful benefit of X-rated cinema, of being able to talk any way you please. I don't give a fuck, stuff like that. And also some interesting dirty talk mixing in the horror world of kind of dirty talk, dirty horror talk in the horror world. So very, very unique play with that as well. This is 1973's The Sexorcist, and the lead girl is just great. She's great sexually, and she's also great in the horror world. Here it is, folks. This is something special here. Great artwork, too. Great homemade, homegrown artwork. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like 1973's The Sexorcist. Thank you, Vinegar Syndrome, for putting this out. I picked this up, and this is just freaking awesome. Really, really great. Please feel free to check out my own personal films at youtube.com/poopy diarrhea. That's Poopy diarrhea. Thank you so much, and good night.